Hello, this is Joy Workshop. This is class number 4, and the subject for today is cultivating joy. I'm going to be talking about material that I found in 2 different books to support this theory. So the first book I'm going to be talking about, it's called The Conquest of Happiness. This is by Bertrand Russell. This book was published in 1930. So some of the ideas here might sound a little bit old, especially the way he says them. But this guy is a Nobel Prize winner, a literature Nobel Prize winner. And he wrote a book a year for like 60 years. So that's the first book I'm going to be talking about. And the second book I'm going to be talking about, it's called Happiness. And it's by Mathieu Ricard. And I'll get into this in a minute. So The Conquest of Happiness is divided into 2 sections. The first part is about what makes us unhappy, and the second part is about what makes us happy. The reason why we need to talk about what makes us unhappy is that if we want to understand the subject of happiness, we need to understand all its angles. And since happiness and unhappiness go together, when happiness is taken away from us, if we have the insight to understand how that process happens, then we can try to cultivate joy from within. So understanding this mechanism between happiness and unhappiness will get us closer to the center, and we will be able to have long-lasting happiness. So one of the first obstacles that we find to happiness is called self-absorption. So when someone is self-absorbed, they will be unhappy. What happens when I think of myself all the time? Then I will be thinking about if I'm hungry, or if I'm tired, or if I'm cold, or if I'm hot, or if I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not wealthy enough, or I'm not funny enough, and I will obsess over it. And there's many angles to this self-absorption. So the first one, and keep in mind this book was published in 1930, and I believe that it is important to have these ideas because even though they might sound old, that's where we're coming from. And so they have to do with our background. The first angle to self-absorption is the attitude of being a sinner. So this is familiar to all of you who were raised in a religious background, especially a Christian background. To always have the attitude of a sinner means that if you're doing something that you think is wrong, you will kill the joy within you. And it can be as simple as having a slice of chocolate cake. If you are enjoying that chocolate cake and that chocolate cake is giving you pleasure and you think pleasure is a sin, then the whole time you have that chocolate cake, you will be in pain. If you don't have the chocolate cake, you will be thinking about having the chocolate cake and you will be in pain. So I'm not saying that gluttony is good or lust is good or greed is good. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if you have this identity of being a sinner 24/7, it will be difficult for you to enjoy your life. All right, there's a more modern example of that would be, I have eco guilt every day. All the time, whenever I finish something, I look at a container, it's like, oh, I'm creating more trash. I am finishing the planet. So that's one of the angles to being guilty, feeling guilty, being in pain, questioning your actions. The second angle to this is the narcissism. Narcissism is being self-absorbed, but the angle of narcissism is that the narcissist is always seeking attention. And it's something that never ends. So let's say the narcissist is a guy and he gets the girl, then he wants more attention. He wants to seek more attention and he would want to get another girl. Or if it's a business, once that business is successful and it got all the attention he wanted to get, then he could go to another business. There are also girls and women. We can also be narcissists. And so if we get the guy, and then same thing applies. Then there's megalomaniacs. That's a little bit to the next level because that has to do with power and manipulation. Megalomaniacs, it's never enough. They always want to land on top. And it's, once again, being self-absorbed. There's also one of these angles about unhappiness and pain. It has to do with the pride of misery. The pride of misery has to do with complaining. And it's a mood and it's an attitude. And so there are some eras that have a theme to them. For example, the romantic era, one of the themes in the romantic era was platonic love. Platonic love is that it's never consummated love. It's always something that will never come. It's being in love with love. And it's an unrealized love. Another angle to self-absorption is competition. The reason why competition brings unhappiness is that it's a struggle for success. It's not enough to do something. We have to do it better than everybody else. So if I go to the Olympics and I get a silver medal, I did better than millions of people. Millions of people didn't get here. I got here and just a few people got here. There's just one person out of everybody, just one person that got the gold medal. And that, if I'm obsessed with competition, that will be enough to bring me on happiness for the rest of my life, because I went to the Olympics and I didn't get the gold. I just got the silver. And so that could be a tragedy forever and ever and ever and ever if that's the story I choose to tell myself. Another thing that brings us unhappiness is boredom. So it's important to think about boredom, because boredom has to do with not being able to enjoy leisure. Who doesn't enjoy leisure? People who are very competitive, people who are megalomaniacs, people who all want attention all the time. The reason why this pandemic has brought that challenge into our lives is that there are people who want to be competing all day long. And then in the pandemic, since we were isolated, we just had time to ourselves and we could have done things that are non-competitive, like cooking, gardening, painting, singing, writing. But maybe there's no thrill because there's no excitement. So boredom comes from not being able to enjoy your free time. Then there's fatigue, but the angle that this book gives to fatigue is very interesting. He talks about mental fatigue and he talks about mental hygiene. So the reason why people are tired and they don't sleep well has to do with insomnia. Why do we get insomnia? Because we're thinking, and we can't stop thinking. What are we thinking about? We're worrying. So there's all sorts of levels to worrying. You can be worrying about going to pick up the dry cleaners tomorrow and going to the supermarket, or you can be worrying about your father dying. There's all sorts of levels, right? So one of the ways to approach this mental fatigue is that mental hygiene, all it means is that you think about things at the right time. So if I have to make a decision in 1 month, it really doesn't serve any purpose for me to be thinking about that every single day, because I can't do anything about it. Or if someone is dying and I cannot do anything about it, I can be miserable for a year, or I can be miserable for a week, or I can be miserable for 10 years if I want. So to think about things at the right time shrinks the problems, shrinks the worry. And one of the ways to approach this is to face fear and to use maximum concentration possible and look at the problem so we can see it as realistically as possible. That's very helpful. Another angle to unhappiness is envy. So the difference between competition and envy: competition is the struggle for success. But envy is similar to competition, but here we suffer because someone has something better than we do. So in competition, we might get and we have something better than the other person, but we're still struggling because there's probably someone in the world who has something better or did better. Envy is just thinking about someone having something better than we do. A nicer house, a nicer partner, nicer children, better education. It never ends. There's all these options. And Bertrand Russell makes a very funny example. He says Napoleon was envious of Caesar, Caesar was envious of Alexander the Great, and Alexander the Great was envious of Hercules, who never existed. So you see, it never ends. Then there's remorse and repentance, which is just constant suffering, and it looks like guilt, a lot like guilt. And it's an attitude of always questioning our actions and our thoughts. The last one is paranoia, which is a mental disorder, and it can be pretty serious. But one of the things that could help us stay happier for a longer period of time is to hang out with people like us, to hang out with the right tribe. Why? Because if I hang out with people who think the way I think and act the way I act, or have similar beliefs than I do, the fear of public opinion might diminish just a bit. Anyways, so now we go to the subject of what makes us happy. So there are 4 levels of happiness. Level 1 is physical. It's animal, okay? And it's pleasure. That has to do with eating, fornicating, sleeping, being warm, being relaxed, not tired, comfortable. It all has to do with the body. It's physical. We share that with animals. That is the basic form. Then there's happiness, and that's psychological, and has to do with what we think and what we feel about what we think, the stories we tell ourselves. That's psychological. But a higher level is joy, and joy is spiritual, and that requires some training and some effort. Above joy is at an even higher level, which is called bliss, and bliss is a form of enlightenment. The difference between joy and enlightenment or bliss is that Joy will come and go depending on your spiritual training, your spiritual life. But once you reach a certain level and you come to bliss, bliss cannot be taken away from you, and it is completely independent from the circumstances. And very few people get there, but it needs to be mentioned so that we know that there's 4 levels. And when we're eating something good, we need to be aware that that's just pleasure. It's not happiness. When we feel happy, we need to understand that it's something that we're telling ourselves. It's just an approach. When we feel joy, it is a product of training, mental training, and spiritual training. And at the very top of all that is bliss. Okay, so what makes us happy? I'm going to tell you a little story, which is the happy man's shirt. And I'll make it brief. So there was this king, and his son was miserable, and he was sick, and he was dying. And he thought, if I could only get a happy man's shirt, my son would wear it, and he would be happy. So he gets the wisest man in the kingdom and says, go find me a happy man. And he doesn't trust them, because when they bring people, they have a hidden agenda. They want to stay in the castle, or they want to inherit some money. And so he's just, anyway, so he goes out and he's riding his horse, and then he hears someone whistling. And he's like, that's a happy man. I'm going to go get his shirt. And then he finds this man, and he was whistling. He's working in the fields. And it's like, why are you so happy? Well, I have a blue sky. I have a job. I have a roof over my head. And I have food. I'm okay. And he says, I demand you give me your shirt. And the guy says, I don't have a shirt. So there's many layers to the lesson in this story. And the first one is that happiness is non-transferable. I cannot give you my happiness. You have to create your own happiness. I can only have my own. But the other one is that the deeper the effort, the longer the happiness will last. So if I have a slice of chocolate cake, that'll make me happy for just about 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'll start questioning the calories. If I study and I graduate, that is a long journey. And the level of happiness that will bring into my life is much deeper. And so lasting joy, lasting happiness does have to do with personal effort. And that's one of the reasons why people who are born into privilege have to think about this a little bit harder, because if they're born and they have everything they want, sometimes success is confused with happiness, and then success is confused with material stuff. So if you have everything you need materially, then you think, why am I not happy? But anyway, so happiness does have to do with effort. Another ingredient for happiness has to do with zest. So yeah, here we have to be aware of our body and exercise and being healthy and being fit and having physical stamina. That will really help. Then comes affection. And in affection, being loved makes us happy, but loving makes us even happier. So when someone does something for us, that makes us happy. But when we do something for someone else, that's a higher level of happiness. Then there's family. Family can also be a source of happiness. But if there's the misery pride that I talked about earlier, then the mother could say, all the sacrifices I have made for you, I gave you my life, and so on and so forth. Or it can be smothering on top of the child. Take a sweater, you can get a cold, did you eat enough, blah, 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 and it just can go on and on. And maybe you don't think you're smothering two children, but if you think about your own mothers, maybe that is a more accurate perception of what that can look like. Work, of course, can be a source of happiness, especially if it has to do with a purpose, having a purpose and a meaning. Not all works are made equal. So if you sell drugs or alcohol or, I'm not going to go into politics, but if you sell something that is harmful for people, it's not the same as if you are an artist or a painter or a piano player, or, I mean, there are different activities. If you sell light bulbs, let's make it neutral, light bulbs, it's not the same as, I don't know, selling art or selling, things that are good for people, like healthy stuff or exercise or anything like that. Now I'm going to talk about this book, and I'm going to be brief with this one because I've already taken a long time now. But this book is a Buddhist book. This guy, Mathieu Ricard, is a Buddhist monk. He's the son of a French intellectual. He was living in Paris, and he felt that it was not enough, and he went and lived in India and became a monk. So he wrote this book. It's very, very Buddhist. It's very philosophical. And I guess that the main idea in this book is that happiness is a product of inner peace. And so when he talks to teenagers in different places in the world, They say, I want happiness, and I want it quick. And he explains that inner peace takes time and you have to work hard at it, etc. And they say, no, I think I'm just gonna smoke a joint and I'm just gonna get high. Yeah, if you want immediate satisfaction, yeah, there's the highway of addictions there for you. But if you want peace of mind, is a commodity, and it is the goal, and it is not sexy, and it is not funny, and it is not glamorous. It's quiet lives give lasting joy, and people who are very successful in the long run don't have such glamorous lives, and so that is something to think about. All right, well, thank you for your attention. See you next time.